Blaxploitation film is really a word that was put together by, I believe it was the NAACP and CORE back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s when these films first started coming out. And you had all of these black actors portraying themselves as pimps and hustlers, and the women, in some cases, were prostitutes. And it just put a negative spin on what, in my opinion, was actually going on in the community. Now, some people may consider that, you know, we're putting our dirty laundry on screen, we don't want to do that. That's not the portrayal we want to have of black folks in the 70s. But in reality, that's what was going on. Because I could remember being a kid walking through Harlem with my grandfather, and like it was yesterday, I could see the abandoned buildings. I could see people who were not, you know, I guess walking on the right path of life and doing what they should have been doing. So these films were just telling a story of what was going on. Now we could debate whether it was right for somebody who was not a person of color to make these films, in as much as we could debate the people of color that made the films. For me, it is what it is. It was what was going on in the community at the time, and these films just told a story. And they were magnificent stories if the films were done properly, in as much as there were some stories that kept repeating themselves over and over again, and audiences got tired of seeing the same story that was being told with different actors, or poorly shot, poorly produced, so on and so forth. But Blaxploitation films are films that took aspects of black life and put them on films, and you had these great posters that in some cases were better than the films. And you had different genres of these films. You had sports films that came out at this period. You had musicals. You had action and crime dramas. So it wasn't so much that, you know, it was taking an aspect of black life. It was also taking what was going on within the communities. Whether people were selling drugs, whether, you know, black cops were solving crimes, and whether black doctors were, you know, finding cures for diseases. You had all of this stuff going on, and it was just being told in a much bigger setting on the silver screen, so to speak. So, you know, there's a lot of people who, you know, have a very bad taste in their mouth about Blaxploitation. And then they have people like me who love this stuff. I think it was the greatest time in cinematic history, again, for these films to have been made, because at no time since then has this many films have captured black life or just captured what's going on like it did in the 1970s, where you had almost 275 films that were made in one decade of the 1970s. It hasn't been done like that yet. Black actors and actresses from the 1970s Blaxploitation film genre, you know, that it was a very special time for them, because you had a lot of actors who were working. They were making these films, they were writing the films, they were producing them and directing them. And then you had these two organizations that, you know, the NAACP and CORE, who were just so offended by these films that were being produced, but yet you had all of these people who were being employed. And so I think the level of offense versus people being employed, you know, the offensive level outweighed having these people employed, that everything shut down in Hollywood. And so you had all of these actors who are now out of work, who were not getting the calls from their management, who could not find work, who lost their homes, who ended up homeless, and who, you know, basically disappeared from society because there was they were so shunned in the industry from making these films. And you had a number of actors and actresses who today are only recognized by the films that they did in the 70s. So although their careers have moved on and they have made other films like Pam Grier and Richard Roundtree and Fred Williamson, they are still kind of placed in this box to be known as Coffee or Shaft or Black Caesar. And, you know, I have read that for Richard Roundtree, he was never really able to break that cycle, although he has done amazing things and been in a lot of movies that, you know, show that he was a very well-trained actor. And, you know, he wasn't just a badass, you know, in Shaft. But yet, these films kept some actors and actresses in a box, and they have not been able to escape that. But I think the only one, and again, this is from the outside looking in, and from what I've read, Pam Grier is the only one who's been able to embrace it. You know, she talks about it, she writes about it, she shares her experiences about that time when she was making these films. And her career has gone on. She has made other films, maybe not to the level of which she would want it to go, but she has certainly been creating other films, and she's been called on. You know, Quentin Tarantino did the film, goodness, the name escapes me. Jackie Brown did the film Jackie Brown with her, and that resurrected her career. So, you know, it's a shame that they're placed in this box called Blaxploitation, but a number of them have moved on to create other films. You know, when you look back on that, that is why the Museum of Uncut Funk is collecting these posters and you know, trying to not recreate history, but remind people of this period of cinematic history. Oh, well, as far as Blaxploitation films, my favorites are the top 5 grossing films, which was Coffee, Foxy Brown, The Mac, Superfly, and Shaft. I remember all of them more in as much as I remember one of them less, and I remember The Mac less than I do the others. Coffee and Foxy Brown, as I've told you, Pam Grier, I'm a huge fan of hers. Yes, I had my stepfather take me to see that movie when I was 12, and I think he was more embarrassed than I was, but I've just been a fan of hers ever since. The Mac, not the Mac, Superfly. I love Superfly because I love the whole struggle that this drug dealer had to go through, that he, you know, wanted to change his life, whether for the good or the bad. He wanted to get out of the business. And to go through this story of seeing him, you know, trying to make all of this money so he could live a different life was really very interesting. I think it was groundbreaking at the time that the film was made. You know, having to deal with the corrupt police, having to deal with people that he was in bed with, so to speak, by virtue of them selling drugs, and having to break those ties to be with this woman that he loved, and to have this life that he didn't have to feel like he was looking over his shoulder all the time. It was really a groundbreaking story at that time. And, excuse me, I think it was one of the films that I enjoyed the most. Shaft, on the other hand, was one of the best detective cop / bad guy shows that was ever made. I mean, he was just cool, he was hip, he dressed very well, he was sexy, and, you know, he just had this swagger about himself that you just wanted to go and see Shaft. And, you know, watching Richard Roundtree walk across 42nd Street, you know, and take this perfectly defined body and this fabulous clothing, and, you know, he's just a badass. I mean, it's just one of the best movies out there. So those are my 2 favorite movies, actually, Superfly and Shaft.